Sae'Von Springer is the owner and founder of Native Assets. Any views expressed by Sae'Von or his guest are their own thoughts and opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Native Assets or the guest's respective employer. Any guest appearance by representatives of Web3, NFT, crypto, or any other kind of organization does not constitute an endorsement by Native Assets or the guest's respective employer. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be mistaken as financial advice. Always conduct your own due diligence and consult a qualified professional when considering any investments of any kind. Great day. Welcome back. And today's episode is definitely one for those out there who like evidence, right? A lot of times in this era, people talk about point to the facts or show me the facts. What's the science? All of this. And so who we have today it can deliver that for you in spades. Now, this gentleman has worked for major companies, conglomerates, and he's helped co-author PhD papers. I think Harvard, he can correct me in a second if I'm wrong about that, about data. But what's really important in this whole era of Web3 is that we can't forget the basics, right? We can't fall away from data. And in fact, the blockchain in and of itself, one of the best values that it provides is the ability to see data and connect data sets that before would have been either proprietary or permissioned and unable to really interact with outside data in a way that could give you some really next level insights. So I am very pleased to be joined today by my colleague, Andrew Damon. Welcome to the show, bro. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks, man. Doing great.
Hell yeah, man. So if you could for a second, just set the people up, give them about a 1 minute background so that they understand what you have done in the past and how that skill set translates over to the world of Web3 before we get into the main point of the show today.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is my my second Web3 role actually here at Palm, and been doing this for about 18 months now, which is, I think in Web3 terms, about 25 years. Yeah. At least it feels like it. So I'm a veteran, I guess, in that case, from like full-time work. But I actually come from a scientific background in formal data analytics and geospatial analytics and macroeconomics, and into healthcare data and healthcare workflows, and somehow ended up in Web3. And basically, what I've done here is I'm one of the first. I think I'm one of the literal first, like full-time data analyst in the sector, where we're looking at analyzing, drops and historic data. And a lot of times the most exciting part is that I'm the first one doing it, and we're the first ones exploring data sets in a new sector. So it's super exciting. That's kind of why I do it. And that's why I left my cozy healthcare job for the insanity of Web3, which is a little less formal, to say the least.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you because, to your point, data is so rich and available in this space, right? And I love that. I can just take a contract address, throw it in, and I can get all of this information. But I think the hurdle for a lot of people is that when you do it in that way, the user interface isn't great. You don't actually know, everything is in code. So it's like token URI, this, boom, 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 this. And if you don't really know how to read a smart contract, and even if you kind of know how to do it, that's not the most effective or efficient way to really get the insights about that raw data. So what I was really hoping we could go over today is, before we really just kind of turn this into a series and go into some more specific categories, but if you can do an outline of the power of Web3 data and insights and how you use it and some of the ways that you think it is being underutilized and what people could do if they understood how they could actually make that data interact.
Yeah, that's spot on too. And the nuance to, one of the things I always say, and there's actually an article in Cointelegraph that one of my former colleagues wrote about myself, of all things, and I'll drop it in here for good reference too. And it was around, working with data analysts in the Web2 kind of traditional kind of Fortune 500 realm, where you have really savvy people and you have great analysts who are great at, one or two kind of parts of that sector, whether it's economics or it's scientific data. And when you toss them into a blockchain environment, the nuances of the blockchain would stump anybody. You could be the greatest, data analyst on earth. You don't understand how a blockchain transaction works, or the nuances to how wallets function and the differences between a to and a from, or what the hex and the transactions actually code out to, from minting to sending to somebody. you'd be totally lost. And so having like that background and understanding the transaction side, I've been in the crypto space for about 10 years now, or actually I think it's 11 and a half, since about 2011. So just kind of reading blockchain information and sending Bitcoin back and forth across the interweb. So huge boost from there. But just having, that knowledge, where it really takes you to is when you're trying to actually explore that data. And even when I'm jumping on spaces and I'm talking with people and they're talking about like transaction history, and I kick them over to like Dude Analytics or Flipside Crypto, which I've just discovered as a really good data platform. A lot of it's just these people understand the blockchain, but they don't understand data. But I always tell them that, like, if you understand the blockchain side, you're like 90% there. The SQL and the query polling and everything else is the stuff that you're going to learn pretty quickly. So that's always a big boost for it. But there's, I think as we've grown and analytics have become, synonymous with Web3, like you said, you can read every blockchain transaction since the dawn of, the first block was mined, and the Genesis block. And that gives you a huge boost to be able to read data. It's in one place. It's not going to go anywhere, and it doesn't change, which I think is really important for a data analyst to know your data is not going to change on you between today, tomorrow, or next week. All that historical record's always there, which I think is a great thing to have too. In terms of like tools and sort of, like I said, Flipside Crypto and Dune, they're two great places to start. What's nice too is a lot of these platforms have started to have education pieces. So anyone can get started. They can learn how to write queries. I can talk about, the first time I wrote a Dune query and I had no clue what I was doing from the data model wasn't there, 2-3 years ago. And I used to just read queries to see what they did. And that's how I learned my structure from there. It's always a good place to start. I tell people, open up the query, read what it's doing, and then pull your data, and you can kind of pull your blockchain data. And then from there, it's, sky's the limit. You get as complex as just seeing some sales data down to you could track staking on a contract. You could track, who's the whale in that community, who's buying the most NFTs. And then you get into like the actual like forensics of the cryptocurrency world where you try to track who's sending money to specific contracts. Or my favorite thing, which is what really got me inspired with Web3 data, which was tracking the front running of Q3 of 2021, which was the big meta for all the drops that were coming up, where people were essentially bribing, big air quotes, bribing a miner to basically let their transactions go in first, so they could mine they could basically, grab all the NFTs from that drop. So very interesting routes, but I used to love digging in to see who was doing the bribing, and you'd see people sending out $100,000 in ETH to a mining org to get their transactions in first and to front run, which is kind of a fun concept. But that's how I started, and that's where I kind of got inspired to really jump into this full time. I was pretty fascinated by the data that was available.
Yeah, no, you just covered a lot there. And, even concepts like the MEV, I remember the first time hearing about that, and, the Flash Boys and Flash Bots and everything that the Ghost Step was doing. And I got involved in the Alchemist community and was helping out there. And I may have overinvested into Mist when there was the speculation that they were going to have a direct integration with Uniswap. That's neither here nor there. What I think a lot of the folks listening here, I think about on these transactions, right? Generally, the things that most people are familiar with is the fact that whenever there's a transaction, the two parties involved in that transaction, or the contracts that are involved that might correspond to a wallet. When it happened, how much the transaction was for, what currency or what token was used in that transaction, and ultimately what it was for in theory. If that transaction was for an NFT, if that transaction, or the platform rather, if that happened on Uniswap or somewhere else. For somebody who might be in marketing or somebody who might be involved with growth, as we hear more of companies like Starbucks doing loyalty programs, or Nike and other, Puma did a launch recently, or an activation, what would you say are the main insights, the data that organizations like those and the marketers who work for those organizations, what sort of stuff should they be looking for so that they can be more informed on how to engage with their audience and how to ideally improve the sort of drops that they're doing?
Yeah, a big part, and it's not a long-winded description. It depending on what data they can actually see is super important too. Is depending on their tokenomics structure. A big part of data in the space and where it's transparent and where it's missing is the tokenomics side of are they using custodial wallets which operate largely on their Web2 systems, or are they using just a full decentralized system which gives you technically all the data, but you lose the user attribution, as in you lose first names, emails, if you're now a wallet address, which is fine because you can still track those. That's a big part of for those marketing teams. They typically will think about that stakeholderness of that. If product is deciding that the token is going to be a custodial wallet, they immediately lose the blockchain data but gain other data insights from their own first party systems. Or if they choose to be fully decentralized, they might want to ask, where is that blockchain going? What chain are we using? And how is their blockchain actual consensus written? So, settlement period. Like, they have to be kind of an expert to understand it too, but it's super important because those teams need to know that structure to know where to look for data first.
Okay.
From that point, once they have the decisions of tokenomics from that side, and there's clear defined product constraints and what data is accessible, then you get into really how you dive into that those wallet addresses. And something that's unique about Web3 is that people are identified by their wallet, and that wallet can travel cross-platform. That goes into why custodial and non-custodial is important, because custodial wallets don't leave the platform. If it's a non-custodial, decentralized platform, you can see somebody who, has their loyalty rewards on Starbucks, but also shops at, Sephora, for instance, or shops at another big major brand. And you can see those two cross, interactions happening in real time with the blockchain. That's a huge difference for marketing. Typically, they have to speculate on where their consumers are going. And, that works not just for, marketing, but for everything else in product too. They can actually see, this person likes to shop here. They also like to shop here. And, you have your consumer base there. And that's a huge win for any kind of marketing agency, because now you're taking that guesswork away. And in a cookieless solution for, online commerce too, that's huge. A big part of where marketers need to kind of shift is that this is now a cookieless world. And because of privacy constraints, you can't actually see what your consumers are traveling to. That's starting to get washed away. And with additional usage of VPNs and other kind of, consumer privacy, and more technical with VPN, but because they're doing that, you almost need the blockchain to know about your customers. It's almost a requirement because it's going to help you know what they're doing. It also tells you more about your consumer. Like, are they buying PFPs? Are they buying an NFT? Are they engaging with cryptocurrency purchases? Are they actually transacting? We can see all those things. We can also see what else they collect. Someone who shops at, they're a huge Starbucks consumer. They also have a Bored Ape, and then you see the train of what else they look at. Who else fits into that? And we're going to start to see, I think, at least the next few years, that persona of a wallet become more like you, as opposed to your browser being you, which is what most marketers are, used to seeing, is that browser ID. So that's a huge transition.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that taking place as well, because, and I'm glad you brought up the word cookies and also the distinction between the custodial and the non-custodial wallet, because there is a huge chasm across these different industries in terms of the reception to NFTs as a form factor, let alone, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ether, whatever. But, for instance, gaming communities, by and large, NFTs are horrible, they're a scam, don't ruin my games, even though this same community are the ones paying for these loot boxes and all these other microtransactions inside of their video game, yet they don't own that motherfucker. And so at any point in time, the company behind the publisher, they can sit here and bar your access to these assets. But I guess they're not too concerned about that. But then, as I'm starting to see, the fashion world and luxury brands, they seem to be doing a phenomenal job with their drops, and their consumer base seems super on board with it. So I'm curious, what do you think it is that is holding some of these companies back from going the non-custodial route when they do their drops? Because, to your point, I've seen data sets you've thrown together of literally like every brand that has done a drop. I shit y'all not. This man was crashing Tableau trying to pull up his data and show me some of these sets he was working on. But to your point, it's so dope that for a brand or a company, you can really see, okay, they bought this item or this NFT, but they also hold this in their wallet, and this is the average spend of that person. And it gives you some incredible insights to know exactly where the price sensitivity swings for certain cohorts inside of your client base. And we're not even getting super into the weeds, right? So I
No.
get downright confused when companies don't allow a non-custodial option. Now, other than the concern or the preoccupation that their users are not savvy enough to use something like MetaMask, or that they'll lose their seed phrase, I really struggle to understand why a company would not, at a minimum, give their users both options. Hey, you can do the Web2 login, just put in your email address, connect with Google, boom, bap, boom. Now you're on board and you can get our NFT loyalty rewards points, or connect your MetaMask here. So why, in your opinion, would a brand not at least go for that option?
Yeah, a big part of it is, and some of these earlier drops, and I'm picking on Budweiser, for instance, they went that route because they wanted to have debit card transactions. And I know with a lot of brands coming in, the sensitivity is that they're targeting with the Web3 product their core consumer base, but neglecting the fact that millions of people around the world now own cryptocurrency, and it's becoming more synonymous. You can have it in your Robinhood account, and I think you can transfer it out of that account now too. So purchasing cryptocurrency gates are gone. We're a long way away from me having to go to a bank parking lot in New Hampshire and buying cryptocurrency with money. That's the cash for Bitcoin days where I come from, and that was a pain in the butt, to say the least. But I think the big part is the misunderstanding that their consumer base doesn't own crypto and wouldn't understand how to fund a wallet. And if they're interested in your product and it's digital and it's an NFT or it's a token, having a hybrid option is the best solution because you're going to capture both. And I typically see, now we see Coinbase getting into the actual transaction market, as well as MoonPay and the other huge service providers in Circle that are allowing that hybrid option, which is a huge transition. And it's actually a better solution because, people will purchase your product because you have that crypto option. I keep a set of funds of crypto in a ledger. And if I want to buy with my debit, it's nice to have that option. I don't want to transfer it over because I'm being lazy. And it just opens up those, opportunities to have the mixed sale platform. And I like that model a lot better. But for people not to, and that goes back to my, previous point of understanding the blockchain, most brands don't understand that difference. They, get pitched over a product that says, here's your purchase flow. They don't know that they could have a hybrid model with platforms like Circle and MoonPay. And I think that's a big part of, the actual, client providers that are coming in and informing them that there are multiple payment options and you can choose one. And I think that's a big difference. And we're starting to see brands do both. There are other nuances besides that. It goes into, like you said, seed phrases. But I see plenty of times, traditional Web2 hooks, like your Google account. A big one I use all the time, and I mean, not all the time, but Blockto on Flow. That's a non-custodial wallet, but it lets you log in with your Google account. You don't have to manage your seed phrases. It's a little nuance, the decentralized, purist and the maximalist, but it is a better way to onboard because it truly is a wallet. They just have to link over with their, Web2 systems. There's also those options. There's so many at this point that it's almost doesn't make sense to offer that solution. And then in terms of, like you're saying, with custodial or non-custodial, having that hybrid model is perfect. And it works for a lot of platforms like Nifty Gateway. Nifty Gateway has both a custodial wallet service and your traditional wallet. You can do, I think they have three actually. You have your normal wallet login, you have your Nifty Gateway wallet, and then you have that hybrid transaction where you can transfer over to mainnet or over to your main wallet and actually be able to sell those products on OpenSeas or other platforms. So it's starting to shift a bit. But with brands in general, I think it comes down to just being informed of the options they have. And maybe they do want to have, they can have those decentralized wallets without the centralization of custodial. And that's totally an option nowadays.
Yeah. You mentioning Nifty Gateway took me back, man, because that was actually the first platform that I bought an NFT on. I want to say it was February of 2021, and there was a Monster Cat collection.
Yo, I honestly just was about to ask, was it the Monster Cat drop? I grabbed one of those too. That's why it's super funny. But I was about to ask you, was it Monster Cats, the Constellations? Yeah.
Yep.
I grabbed a couple of those too. That's so good.
Yeah, no. It's wild, man, because it's like I was hearing more about the NFTs and I was kind of skeptical for a while because I just, I'd gone super heavy into like DeFi and Chainlink and some of these other tokens. And so I was just like late. In my opinion, I was late, but this was either right around or before the damn Bored Ape Yacht Club even happened to drop.
Yeah.
Which every time in hindsight, I'm so like, what? But hindsight's 2020. But anyhow, the experience was so smooth. And I loved that I could just take the ETH I already had, send it over, but also you had that other option. And yeah, I think they do some really cool stuff in Nifty Gateway. So as we see these big companies come in, right? Obviously, everybody, people saying this, till they're blue in the face now. We've got Starbucks releasing the loyalty rewards point, and they had some PR person tell them don't use the word NFT, but they're doing NFTs with Polygon. We've seen that Apple is mentioning that they are going to allow all of the people who are in the App Store to include NFTs in what they're doing.
Yep.
We have seen Epic Games come out in favor of NFTs, whereas Steam said no, but Epic Games is Fortnite, so that's massive. Eventually, I see a world where everybody does have one of these wallets, right? Because it's par for the course. Just like eventually, when people were first talking about going from paper checks to debit and credit cards, they were like, oh no, why would I do that? And then that transition from that over to Venmo and Cash App. And now we're seeing this next transition where you have something that is more secure, in my opinion, than what you get with a Venmo and a Cash App. How do you think, just broad strokes, that transition where we do see these big companies onboard millions and hundreds of millions of people, how do you think that's going to just impact data and privacy?
Yeah, a big part of that is, it goes down to the common phrase that if you don't own your keys, you don't own your crypto. That's like the phrase people use for like Coinbase largely, where they, if you don't have access to your keys, that crypto's not in your wallet. And so that's from my side, that's the biggest concern is how people, manage their money from that side. We trust our banks now anyway, but those are protected by, FDIC, everything else too. A fun Starbucks fact that I was just added the other day is Starbucks is like the 5th largest bank in the United States because of their gift cards. And that's insane to think about. Like the fact that there's so much gift card funds available at the 5th largest bank. That's a fun fact to throw out there, but really interesting to hear that. It might be 3rd or 5th. I don't know the exact number, but that's a big part of, people are trusting those services now. It's really a matter of, we have a lot of consumer protection rights for, privacy on the internet, but, nothing related to like a blockchain wallet.
Zero.
And it's the Wild West. And I think it still will be for a while as legislative challenges come up. But I think that just based on how, the language is coming up and how politicians, they usually lead that kind of initiative and regulators too, that we'll see some transitions and hopefully, fingers crossed, we finally get some kind of, government support is always scary to this kind of world. I think it was always, crypto was founded with a libertarian mindset of its, this and that. But there's almost a need for base level standards for wallets. And not that it's, big brother owning your wallet. It's more that that's there to protect consumers. And we are seeing those types of challenges to the norm happen. And I think people are okay with it. We see it with open seas and people getting their, wallets dumped and getting their stuff taken and are very proactive on reporting those things, but there's no consumer protection there. And there's really no paper trail that can happen. Whereas if you have protections for people and that's actually stolen, it is treated like theft. And I think that's a big transition. And there is, it's always the thing that no regulation is not, it's just as bad as overregulation in that case, because there's nothing to protect you at all. But I hope to see kind of some transitions there. I don't know where it will go. All I know is that if big brands, one of the largest, food and beverage organizations and companies on earth Starbucks is embracing Web3, we might see that transition really quickly. If not just for the buzzwords, people, politicians love to talk and they will absolutely love to mention that their Starbucks coffee they just got had an NFT, and most likely most consumers will be onboarded to, Web3 and maybe not realizing it actually is Web3. They'll be passively onboarded into in my opinion, a better system that works more for, the consumer side and the collector side than it does in the traditional kind of Web2 sense.
Mm-hmm. I like that take, man. And
yeah.
I just had this realization that Starbucks missed out on a phenomenal opportunity to add a new menu to their item, NFT.
Oh my God.
So I'm gonna get that one to them for free.
They might take it. I don't know. If he has like or a meme or something like that too. I use a Starbucks app every once in a while, but like just knowing the consumer reward potential and how they've activated. I actually was just discussing this the other day about how they've created kind of their, they're a really interesting use case of technology, and them embracing Web3, I think, is the pivotal point for probably most brands to be onboarded. They're going to onboard probably most brands. And then at least in those sectors, but it's going to really take away the risk adverse because a lot of use cases is going to come from it. A lot of analysis is going to come up. Back to that data side. A lot of learnings are going to come up. And because they're coming in, more analysis will be performed on like what users like or what consumers like. And really,
they'll build a playbook.
Yeah, and they're a pure platform play. They started off with essentially downtown Seattle, right in Pike Place, with their first store in like 1972 or something like that. And then over time they evolved. But their app came out in 2013, and that's where they really shifted their entire model. And it recreated, quick service coffee in the United States, which everyone's been to Starbucks, everyone knows what it is, and they're on every street corner in a city. And having that presence in Web3 will be insane for growth. Just the fact that there will be millions of wallets created on day one as soon as this activation goes into play, which I think is insane.
Yeah, I'm going to be waiting for the moment that they actually open it up and allow it to be compatible with self-custodied wallets.
Yeah.
Because I think what would be really amazing, right, for my bags at least, my portfolio, would be if this coincides with, in 2023, the next halving that takes, I guess 2024 technically, the next Bitcoin halving, and now that Ethereum is proof of stake, and so if they transition over to Ethereum mainnet, and then they open up access for people to connect with the MetaMask, and then this is also after the Bitcoin halving, then yeah, I think we could see something wild go down in this space.
From that side, I think like, just their product alone and how they've approached it, it's interesting, because we already know for a fact that now that they're in, Dunkin' Donuts is next. Dunkin' Donuts probably had a spin around in their corporate offices.
Like, damn it! They beat us!
I would guarantee that if they were flat-footed, and it's like flat-footedness for brands is a big one, that typically their competitors get in first and they have to rush to strategy. However, this is not a longer tangent, but kind of a different topic. It's not good to do that because rushing to try and run the market is never a good thing, especially to understand the sector. And it goes back to the full circle of if you don't understand the blockchain and you think that it's, you can jump right in and just throw NFT out there, it's not going to work. You can see Starbucks is very articulated with the terminology they use. They clearly did some consumer research on what would work, and they are still testing the waters, and they're going to be learning a lot. And I imagine this is treated very differently from a traditional product they launch, where it's very hard lined. There's very strict constraints. I would imagine they have some loose, growth because this is going to grow with the consumer base. If people don't like something, they'll absolutely change it. And if they love something, they'll embrace it. And other brands will embrace it too. And I think that's going to be what's really interesting. If consumer rewards in the sense that they're minted and you have proof of it and you can show it off to all your friends like a PO-app, but for real utility in store, that's going to be huge. I think the reference I used the other day when I was talking about this was the app Foursquare? I remember Foursquare at all?
Yes, no, 100% I do.
So Foursquare was a consumer rewards platform that when you went to a geolocation, which is like a restaurant or store, you checked in, and if you were the number one person to check in, and sometimes I drive by businesses that I like to go to and check in every time I drove by, just to cheat because I could do that. But if you do that check-in process, I can picture that with like Starbucks, like, consumer rewards aren't just, they're not just tied to the app, they're tied to you. And, we get into NFC technology, we get into wearables and everything else that links over. You can already pay with your phone with an NFC reader. If those benefits are traveling with you already, it's just kind of a synonymous relationship between the two. Consumer rewards go to your phone, and that phone's connected to your MetaMask wallet. It pulls funds from your MetaMask. It also looks to see, it's Bored Ape Day. Any Bored Ape holder, going to do some promotions, go straight to the store and you get it half off your coffee, or you get a Bored Ape banana split. I don't know what you're going to get, but you get something like that. And consumers and brands can token gate and activate off of your wallet. And I think that's a whole different world we're going to get into, but that's maybe a longer tangent for another call too. But getting into like what benefits you can do, and even brands reducing seasonality. Starbucks has seasonality in their sales. And if you can activate Web3 users to boost sales of certain stores through promotion and wallet activations, you have a pretty cool ability to really activate your consumer base in a positive way, as opposed to just push notifications too.
There's a lot of layers here, and it's still so the E word early, but there's still so much to be figured out, and to really kind of massage through the nuances here to really find out ways to translate this from a tech level to culture, which is what NFTs as a form factor really did, and then now really move this over into an experience aspect, which I think is the component that has been missing from NFTs, and the last bull run, or the first bull run that they had throughout 2021. So cool. We're up on time for this particular call, but before we head out of here, first off, thank you. And then if you could also let the people know where they can find you, where they can get in contact with you.
Oh man, I'll do my Twitter. It's a good one too. LinkedIn seems too formal for things like this, but you can grab me on Twitter with @SpicyTunaRoll. That's my handle. Usually I say that and everyone's like, the wild Twitter handle, but
it's Twitter. They're supposed to be wild.
It's Twitter,
Please tell me you have spicytunaroll.eth.
I do, yeah, 100%.
Okay, yeah, I was about to say, there's no way you don't have that. Okay, hell yeah.
It's 10 characters, like 10 or 12 characters. It's cheap too, so.
Nice. I dig it. Well, awesome. Spicy Tuna Roll, I appreciate you, and I'll see you soon, brother.
Thanks, man.
You niggas ain't cheat me, you reenacted TV. I'm a real life shot caller, you niggas